Whether you're upper, middle, or lower class is based on your total household economic resources. Specifically, we're talking about either your income or your wealth. But as any financial advisor worth their salt will tell you, what you make isn't as important as what you keep. Hey everyone, Matt here from Family Money School. In this video, we're going to talk about what net worth you need to be upper, middle, and lower class in America. Let's go. Now, most expert sources use income to define class. For example, the Pew Research Center defines middle-class households as those earning between 2/3 and 2 times the US median household income. In 2020, that would have meant between $45,014 and $134,502, using the US Census Bureau's median income of $67,521. But only using income to define class has two major drawbacks. First, it doesn't allow you to crush the like button and subscribe to this awesome but largely undiscovered channel. Seriously though, only using income to define class has two major drawbacks, totally unrelated to smashing buttons or subscribing. First, it doesn't take into account any of the assets a household has. These could be things like real estate, investments, or collectibles. And second, looking only at income doesn't take into consideration a person's age, stage of life, or where they live. Net worth, on the other hand, is a great indicator of wealth. You just have to understand that the relationship between net worth and wealth is relative. The size of a person's net worth and how wealthy that makes them depends largely on their cost of living. Do you expect to live a champagne and caviar lifestyle, or are you more of a meat and potatoes kind of person? For one, meat and potatoes might make them feel rich, and for the other, a $100 bottle of champagne would be slumming it. In other words, it's very personal. So just keep that in mind as we look at the net worth of different classes. Okay, real quick review before we dive in. Net worth is simply the value of all of your assets minus any liabilities. In simple terms, it's everything you own minus everything you owe. So if you have more assets than debts, your net worth will be positive. But if you owe more on your debts than you own in assets, it's entirely possible to have a negative net worth. According to the most recent data from the Federal Reserve, 2020 is what we'll use for this video, the median household net worth in the US is $121,760. And the American Census Bureau breaks down net worth into 5 categories, or quintiles, based on annual household income. And incidentally, these are the same categories we're going to use for this video. First up are the bottom 20%, those considered living in poverty. They have a median net worth of $6,030. Now, people in this category are oftentimes described as living paycheck to paycheck. This typically means they are spending all of their income and not saving or investing to build their net worth. These are low-income households, earning an average of just $14,589 a year. This income is spent almost entirely just to meet their basic needs. These homes don't enjoy any frills, and they scrape by each month just to keep the lights on and food on the table, with 33% struggling to pay the bills. Now, unfortunately, these families often find themselves trapped in the cycle of poverty. And with limited resources to create opportunities to advance themselves, upward mobility is often very difficult. Okay, next up is where the term middle class comes in. Now, according to Pew Research, 90% of Americans consider themselves to be middle class. But based on the numbers, only 52% actually are. Which means that there are those in the lower class who think of themselves as middle class, and some people who are truly wealthy who believe the same thing. So what actually makes someone middle class? Well, as we said earlier, most experts use income as the only measure of being middle class. Because for most people, being in the middle class is all about having more flexibility to be able to spend money on your wants. Are you feeling stressed? Go out and buy yourself something nice. Are you tired of cooking tonight? How about going out for dinner? Do you need a vacation? Go ahead and book one. In the middle class, these decisions are typically based on how you feel, not necessarily how much money you have in your bank account. Now, the middle class have been told over and over that they can spend some more. They've heard from salespeople, advertisers, and the media that they should own a home, be able to buy a nice car, and send their kids to college. They need a plan for a comfortable retirement, save up for potential medical expenses, and put away 6 months of expenses for emergencies. But for many, especially those in the lower middle class and middle class, they don't have the income to keep up with these spending expectations. In fact, incomes in the lower middle class to upper middle class range from $45,014 to $135,042. I mean, this is a massive spread, and as a result, there is an enormous range of net worths in these middle class categories. So first up in the middle class, you've got the lower middle class with a median net worth of $43,760. This group is often made up of new graduates or parents with young families. Many still have remaining student loan debt, childcare costs, relatively new mortgages, and they haven't had years to save and invest. May also include those with stagnant wages or younger households with higher expenses who haven't really had a chance to build up their education and grow their income. Now, as a result, these individuals often have very small or sometimes even negative net worths. Fortunately, in general, as time goes on, net worths tend to increase. People have more years to work, they can earn raises, pay down debt, and save and invest to grow their wealth. Now, as we chatted about, many people in this category feel a great deal of pressure to spend more than they make to keep up appearances as being middle class. However, their modest incomes with an average of $39,479 often make this impossible to do without incurring large amounts of debt. What they perhaps don't realize is that their fellow middle class members, those in the upper middle class, may be earning incomes 3 times what they make. This need to keep up with the Joneses is what keeps the lower middle class's net worths quite low, often sidling them with debt and making it really hard for them to build wealth. Next up is the middle class, with a median net worth of $104,700. Now, how have they been able to double their net worth compared to the lower middle class? Largely by increasing their income, with the average income coming in at $67,846. Now, crossing that 100K net worth threshold doesn't happen overnight. In fact, most people don't achieve a net worth north of $100,000 until between 45 and 55. And that's largely because it takes a few years to increase your income. As your income increases, you've got more opportunity to save. I say opportunity to save because, as Thomas Stanley says in The Millionaire Next Door, it's not how much you make that's important, but rather what you keep. And if you do keep your spending under control, so you're able to actually keep more money, you'll be able to save and invest to grow your net worth. And finally, in the middle class, there's the upper middle class. Now, here you notice another doubling of net worth from just over $100,000 to $201,800. Again, this is largely a result of income increases, with the average income here topping $100,000 for the first time at $109,732. Now, there is a big difference between earning $67,000 in the middle class and $109,000 in the upper middle class. In fact, it's a $42,000 difference. But it's crazy that this massive gap in income only equates to a $100,000 increase in net worth. Let's imagine for a second that both the middle class and upper middle class spent the same amount on their expenses. I mean, not an unreasonable expectation since both are technically in the middle class. In this scenario, the upper middle class should be able to increase their net worth by $100,000 every 2.5 years or so if they invested that extra income. Earning $42,000 more every year, it would take them 2.5 years to make around $100,000 more. Now, if they continue to do this for several years, they should have a much larger median net worth than that of the middle class. But what we see instead is a median net worth of just $100,000 more. And this is the really terrifying aspect of this upper middle class category. A large portion of it is made up of those who are spending so much they have nothing left to save. In fact, a shockingly high number, 40% of those making over $100,000 a year are still living paycheck to paycheck. That's right. Even though the median net worth of the upper middle class is over $200,000, having a high income doesn't guarantee you'll also have a high net worth, as is the case for the 40% in this category who are living paycheck to paycheck. Now, you might be asking yourself, how is this possible? It all comes down to how much of your income remains after you've done all your spending. And this has more to do with your spending and saving habits than it does with your income. In business, a company's profit after all of its expenses have been deducted from revenues is called net income. In personal finance, the difference between your income and all the money you spend is called, well, there's no official name for it. And I can't call it net income because that term is already taken. It means your income after taxes. So I'm going to call it your zone of wealth because it's got a catchy ring to it, and it's really what matters when it comes to growing your net worth. Now, if your zone of wealth is tiny, it's going to be really hard to grow your net worth because you won't have much money to save. We see this for those in the poverty and lower ends of the middle class. But if you can grow that difference between your income and expenses, this zone of wealth, well, you can start to absolutely put growing your net worth on overdrive. So, how do you increase your zone of wealth? Well, there are only two ways. You can either increase your income or lower your expenses. Now, to grow your income, check out this video I did on the best side hustles that no one's ever heard of. Yes, earning a larger income is good, but expanding your zone of wealth isn't solely dependent on how much money you actually make. If you spend it all and have nothing left to invest to build wealth, what good is it really? That's why you need to trim your expenses. And one of the best ways to do that is to plan your spending using a budget. Now, I won't get into the details here for how to set up a budget, but you can check out my video which walks you through all the ins and outs. By increasing your income and cutting your expenses, you'll maximize your zone of wealth, which you can then use to grow your net worth. Now, because the upper middle class has relatively low net worths compared to their incomes, we know that they tend to spend money like crazy, since they're not using that extra income to increase their net worth. And this has two negative outcomes. First, as we talked about, you have households making over $100,000 that are actually living paycheck to paycheck because they have chronic overspending issues. And second, the lower middle class and middle class see their upper middle class buddies and feel the pressure to live the same way. This need to keep up with the Joneses causes them to go deep into debt, buying things they don't need to impress people who are broke themselves. It's all an incredibly vicious cycle. Now, finally, at the top of the net worth table are the top 20%, the upper class or the wealthy. With a median net worth of $608,900, these individuals have been able to grow their net worth by 3 times compared to the upper middle class. Now, how have they been able to do it? Well, they've been able to maximize their zone of wealth by increasing their incomes with an average income of $253,848 and not spending all the extra earnings. Instead, they invest it, as evidenced by the fact that they have a median amount of $208,000 invested in retirement accounts, as opposed to the upper middle class, which only has $68,000. This disciplined approach to saving has allowed them to grow their net worth by 3 times, and it'll set them up to enjoy a comfortable retirement after they continue to save and invest for several years. Now, having a large income can potentially help speed up growing your net worth, but by itself, earning more isn't enough. Again, it's all about maximizing your zone of wealth, that gap between what you earn and what you spend, and investing that money over the long term. And this can happen regardless of your income, because with discipline, good financial habits, wise spending and saving decisions, and a long time horizon, anyone can achieve great wealth. Just like Ronald Read, the Vermont janitor and gas station attendant who quietly amassed a fortune of, get this, $8 million. Now, Read, who passed away at the age of 92, built wealth by living a life described by his friends as quiet and frugal, and investing in companies he knew, like John Deere, AT&T, GE, and GM. Again, it's not solely about having a massive income. As a janitor in Vermont with his experience, Mr. Read would have made no more than $17 an hour in his career, or around $34,000 a year. Now, this income would have put him in the bottom of the lower middle class. But even on that meager income, Mr. Read was able to become a multi-millionaire by maximizing his zone of wealth and investing the money to grow rich as he got older. Now, if you followed his lead and began investing $300 every month, starting at the age of 20, with an average rate of return of 7%, you'd have over $1.1 million by the time you reach the age of 65. And if you kept investing until you were 92 like Mr. Read, well, you would have $7.8 million. So moving into that upper middle class and wealthy class of net worth using this slow and steady method is completely doable. But there's no get rich quick shortcut. It's about spending less than you earn and investing the difference over the long term. I mean, it's not flashy, but it is effective. And when it comes to building your net worth, it's all about substance, not style. But it does take time to build wealth. In general, as a person gets older, not only will they earn more, pay down debt, and increase their savings, the power of compounding will work its math and magic, and their net worth will grow like crazy, especially when you've got a long time horizon. Now, of course, you can accelerate the process if you're willing to drastically cut your expenses and invest the difference. I mean, for example, people in the FIRE movement, that's the Financial Independence Retire Early movement, they maximize their zone of wealth and save 50% of their income and above. Doing so supercharges the process of accumulating assets and allows them to retire early. Regardless of what path you choose, don't get bummed out if you've got a tiny net worth right now. As the old saying goes, the journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. And one of the most important steps you'll take to get rich is to build your wealth through investing. So in the next video, I'll share the characteristics of successful investors you can use to start crushing your net worth right now. I'll see you there.